Welcome and good afternoon. Come on, this isn't U of T. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Not only am I a professor here and a speaker tonight, I'm also the Dean of Startup School. So if you have any feedback, if you'd like any special topics covered, by all means at the break or over pizza, let me know. My name is Dr. Sean Wise. I'm a tenured professor at the Ted Rogers School of Management in our Entrepreneurship department. Many people don't realize that Ryerson is the home for entrepreneurship in Canada with the largest faculty and the most students studying it. A little bit about me. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 13. That's going on 32 years now. I've been a professional investor and venture capitalist since 1999. I had my first business at 13. I've had 5 businesses I've started and sold. I took my first company public at 30. I am currently a partner with Ryerson Futures, the university's seed fund. We've made 23 investments in the last 18 months, and we have 27 investments to go, so that could be you. We look at all of the ideas that come from this campus and around the province and try to find the best. That's not keeping me busy enough. I spent 5 seasons on Dragon's Den, behind the scenes, helping to select pitchers and train them before going to Shark Tank, and before getting my own show on the Oprah Winfrey Network, which you can see Sunday mornings. What we're going to talk about tonight is the real fundamentals of the new wave of entrepreneurship. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between a business model and a business plan. We're going to talk about what's happened to business plans, which used to be the bread and butter of entrepreneurship. We're going to talk a little bit about this new wave of entrepreneurial skills called the Lean Startup methodology. And I am Lean Startup trained. Not only do I have 18 or 19 Lean Startups in my portfolio, I studied Lean Startup at Stanford and UC Berkeley from one of the original pioneers. So today you're going to learn what a pivot is, what customer development is, what hypothesis-based entrepreneurship is. But I want to start even earlier than that. It is a fabulous time to start a startup, especially a digital startup, an online startup. When I started investing in companies in 1997, it cost $5 million to get a new piece of software to market. It took 24 to 36 months before you even saw what it could do. So usually you would write a check for $2 million, $3 million, and then you'd spend the next 3 years praying that that company would somehow not fail. And after the dot-com boom, we had the dot-com bust, and you now know that many of those companies failed. Fast forward to 2006, the arrival of Web 2.0, and the price to launch a digital startup dropped from $5 million to $500,000. Why? Well, more people were on the internet, so you had more people buying stuff, you had larger markets. But most importantly, you had infrastructure. Before Google, there wasn't a Google. Before PayPal, there wasn't a PayPal. And before Amazon and Shopify and eBay and Facebook and LinkedIn, there wasn't that sort of infrastructure. But over the last 20 years, thousands upon thousands of startups have been built, and some have provided the backbone to allow you now to launch. Think about Alaska. The first people who came to Alaska didn't have roads, didn't have water, didn't have power. So they had to build all of that. But fast forward a few decades, and the next people to come to Alaska got the benefit of all of that infrastructure. And keep going down that model, and you'll understand that we've gone from 5 million in 1997 to 500,000 in 2007. To 2015, you can launch a startup in 100 days with $100 and be making $100,000 by the end of the year. Now, that isn't trite. We teach a course, a master's level course called Starting Startups, and you have 100 days to generate revenue from nothing. So we know it's possible now, and that's really good, because let me see a show of hands. How many people have $5 million lying around? Not too many, but we could all scrape together $50, buy a domain name, buy some Google AdWords, test some ideas. So because the cost of starting a startup has lost a lot of its glamour, we can now do for $5,000 what used to cost $5 million. This idea of raising money before launch has become passé. It's no longer required for you to have rich friends to help you start your business. Next, there are no longer geo constraints. If you open a store on Yonge Street, you're limited to the millions of people who live within the driving, flying, or busing of Yonge Street. But if you open a store on the internet, you can reach anyone in the world who's connected. We've also had a chance to investigate why some startups succeed and others don't. People like Steve Blank and Eric Ries and Ash Majura have spent decades studying these processes to help us have a roadmap to success. When I was in business school in the early 90s and I wanted to learn entrepreneurship, the best thing they could do was give you a book on someone's biography, to see how Colonel Sanders did it, to see how Ronald McDonald did it. I know he's not the founder. Ray Kroc was the founder. But now we've actually been able to monitor, observe, and write up an actual roadmap from cool idea to cool bank account. And I'll even show you one of those. This is a sample roadmap, a little blurry. It's called The Disciplined Entrepreneurship. It's by Bill Aulet, who's an MIT professor. Great book. And it lists the 24 steps that it takes for you to figure out whether this is worth doing, for you to generate that first revenue. And every semester, Bill runs this class with 100 MIT engineers. And in 90 days, 100 days, 120 days, they've launched real businesses and they've taken it to market. So you can look up this roadmap by just looking up disciplined entrepreneurship. We now know unequivocally that you could start today, spend $100 in 100 days, and come up with a revenue-generating business that would justify dropping out, doubling down, and trying to grow your business. But it's not 100 days of sitting on the couch. It's 100 18-hour days of going through the lean startup methodology, of working with customers to test your assumptions. And that's what I'm going to give you a little flavor of today. What sort of things it takes to get started and how you alone can get started now. I think the first thing that we need to start with is this concept of what is a startup. People get this wrong all the time. They think you're a startup if you're a new business. They think you're a startup if you have few employees. They think you're a startup if you're not making lots of money. That's actually not what the definition of a startup is. This bearded happy fellow is my professor, Steve Blank, from Stanford and UC Berkeley. And Steve is the founder of the Entrepreneur's Roadmap, the Startup Owner's Manual, and he defines a startup in such a way that we've all adopted it. He says that a startup is a new organization formed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. So let's go a little slower. A startup, the job of a startup is to search. Search for what? To search for the underlying business, a business that will work. What kind of business? One that is repeatable and scalable. Scalability or scaling or scalable is simply the concept that the more you do of something, revenues grow and costs stay the same. Think about software. I make a game called Angry Chicken, and I spend $10,000 to make Angry Chicken and to get it on the iTunes App Store. You download it for 99 cents, and it still cost me $10,000. 1,000 people download it, and it still cost me $10,000. My costs are sunk. They're fixed. But the more people who use it, the more those costs can be spread out. Every time I add a new user, I get the revenue, but I don't get the costs. That's the heart of being a startup and scaling. Right? When I was a lawyer, I didn't have that sort of business model. My business model at Ernst & Young was hours worked times rate per hour times number of people doing that work. If I wanted more money, I needed to work more hours, charge more, hire more juniors. It doesn't scale. Every extra hour a lawyer makes does get them hundreds of dollars in revenue, but it has the same costs. Whereas software as a service, like Google or Facebook, they can add new users for pennies. Every time Facebook gets your grandma to sign up, it's costing Facebook a penny. A penny for the server space to store all her pictures, a penny for the software amortized over 1 billion users, but they get to make $45 a year. That's what Facebook makes per user. Okay? They make on average $45. So now multiply that by 1 billion and it's not a bad business. But the job of a startup is to find the path to be scalable, to look into uncertainty and lock down the model. Well, that always begs the question, what's the difference between a startup and a Smee, a small and medium-sized enterprise? There's quite a lot. Notwithstanding that our provincial and federal governments can't tell the difference, a startup is a company looking for its model, looking to become a world-dominating player. Think Google, Facebook, Twitter, Tinder, Snapchat. A Smee is the backbone of our economy. Think the local grocery store, the hair salon, the pizza parlor. They're all the backbone of our economy. 99 out of 100 businesses in Canada aren't startups. They're small and medium-sized enterprises. And in 5 or 10 years, they'll be small or medium-sized enterprises. But a startup won't. It'll either be dead or it'll be a world changer. So startups are small, they are young, they don't make a lot of money, but they're not small and medium-sized enterprises. You have to have that difference. If you're just wanting to open a chain of dry cleaners, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're just wanting to take over the family business, there's nothing wrong with that. The majority of our economy is driven that way. But they're not startups. Startups are these temporary organizations that are searching for a business model, which of course begs the question, what's a business model? Not complicated, but often mistaken. A business plan is a big, thick document that you spend hundreds of hours to write and no one reads. A business model is the underlying process by which you generate value for your users and customers. Let me give you an example. The business model of pizza. Very simple. We're going to see it in action in an hour or so. They get groceries, vegetables, tomato sauce, dough. Okay? They hire an out-of-work York student. It's okay to laugh. An out-of-work York student. Thank you, tough audience. That York student mixes it all up, bakes it in the oven, and then sells it to that Ryerson student who's laughing at them for using their Bachelor of Arts in this way. No, it's not Bachelor of Arts, it's just York. So the business model of pizza is input, vegetables, tomatoes, pepperoni, and York students. Output, pizza that's yummy in our tummies, and we're going to eat it. A startup business model is similar. What goes in and what comes out. The inputs of the Facebook business model are you and I, and the pictures that we share. The outputs are the advertising they sell. See, we're all Facebook users, but we're not Facebook customers. We're Facebook users who trade our attention, our eyeballs, for pictures of cats, the ability to store our drunken photos, the ability to spy on our ex-girlfriends or boyfriends. What does Facebook do? It gives us this privilege to load up our photos. In return, it sells our eyeballs, our attention, our bandwidth against that for ads. So the business model of Facebook is monetizing your pictures of grandma and the cat and you and your friends drunk. The business model of Google, very similar. Users search, they charge money against the search results. A startup stops being a startup once it has found its repeatable and scalable business model. Once we've hit what's known as product market fit, and we'll get there in a second, bless you. So Smees aren't startups. All startups are Smees, but very few Smees are startups, small, medium-sized enterprises. And most importantly, a startup is not a small version of a big company. Google as a startup had nothing to do with Google as a world corporation. Google as a startup was trying to figure out, how do we make money? How do we get people to come to our site? How do we turn that value we have about indexing the knowledge of the planet into something I can monetize? A startup is not a small version of a big company. And this really gets to the heart of tonight's discussion. When I was in business school in the 20th century, we were told to build our products in secret. Shh, someone will steal your idea. Don't ever show it to a customer before it's perfect. You only have one chance to make a first impression. Most of the businesses were written in 50-page business plans, and they were driven by engineering or R&D developments. That has changed 100%. In the modern day, in the 21st century, we're talking about going to customers early and often. Even before you have a prototype, which we call the minimum viable product or MVP, go to your customers. Make sure the problem you think they're having is actually being had. Make sure you're not the only person who thinks your solution is just crazy enough that it could work. Make sure the market exists. Otherwise, what are you busy coding? Entrepreneurs make so much deal about creating their prototype, and then they find out no one cares. Go backwards. Find out what they care about and build to your customers. After all, it's fine not to make money for a few days, a few weeks, or even a few months. But eventually, a business that doesn't make money doesn't sustain. And if you can't sustain, what is the point? We talked in the 20th century about keeping our ideas secret. In the 21st century, it's share, share, share. Talk to as many people about the idea as you can. Solicit feedback. Don't be afraid of people stealing your idea, because ideas are worthless. It's the execution of that idea that builds value. I can explain to you how Google's PageRank works. I can't build Google's search engine. I understand how it works, the idea, but I can't execute it. If you have an idea that is so easy to execute that someone can steal it simply by hearing about it, I'm not sure it's really that innovative of an idea, let alone an idea that's worth executing. We used to worry that we should only make a good impression on our customers. We've given up on that. Now we ship beta products. Beta is a fancy word for this sucks. Okay? Forgive us. It's going to solve your problem, but it's going to be ugly. Think about the first email sent. The first email system. Didn't have spell check. Didn't have fonts to choose from. Certainly didn't have the drunk recall button that Google was just launching. You know that? Your Gmail, if you send an email and you regret it, you can take it back now. It's a new feature they're testing. So instead of trying to be perfect, which we never were, we try to be crappy. We tell our customers it's going to be crappy. But with their help, it'll be less crappy each and every day until one day you wake up and it's not crappy anymore. Think about Gmail. How long was that beta tag on Gmail for? A long time. Because beta means it may not be perfect, and that's okay. People adopted email because getting a message from London, England to New York City, America took weeks. But email got it there instantly. And instantly is so much better than weeks. If my girlfriend was going to send me a letter breaking up with me, I want to know right away. I don't want to wait 2 weeks and then have to write her a letter back about why she shouldn't and why she should take me back. Email was so good that people adopted it. People were willing to use it. Here's another great example. When I went to school, Microsoft used to make me pay $350 every year for the privilege of using Microsoft Word. And the way they did that was by destroying all the competitors until they were the only business left. And they had a monopoly. 95% of the word processing being used in colleges and offices around the world were owned by Microsoft. Then Google Docs came about. And it wasn't perfect. It only had about 10 to 15% of the features that Microsoft Word had. Those 10 to 15% of the features were the majority of features that everyone uses, not the secret features that no one cares about. But it got adopted, not because it was perfect. In fact, Google Docs was beta for a long time, but because free is exponentially better than $350 a year. Quick show of hands, how many people have Microsoft Word? Okay. How many people have used Google Docs? In 5 years, Google has changed the startup called Writely into Google Docs. We've switched from being driven by engineers into being driven by customers. And most importantly for our discussion, We've thrown out the idea of writing business plans, plans that took hundreds of hours and were wrong the day we printed them, were out of date instantly. And we've switched to the lean canvas, which I'm going to introduce you to today. A business plan is an internal document created without customer feedback that is meant to convey your current thinking on your business. The problem is, it's really big, it's always wrong, it's based on assumptions, and the moment you print it, it's out of date because your business keeps growing. That is different than a business model. A business model is what is the business of the company? How does it make money? How does it take the York students, add the ingredients, have them make the pizza, and sell the pizza? A business model describes the rationale of how a venture creates, delivers, and captures value. People don't seem to understand that a transaction is part of a social contract. You showed up here today, and I am obligated by social contract to provide you with quality information. You go to Pizza Pizza, you give them your money, they give you the pizza. What's your social contract with Facebook? It's free. So if they keep your images even after you take them down, are they allowed to? It's free. If they kick you off, can you complain? You haven't paid anything for it. You're not even their customer. You have to understand that at the heart of the business model is the social contract. What goes in, what goes out. What people pay for, what you deliver. And sometimes it's not what you think. Google delivers ease of use and convenience. Facebook delivers engaging content, I don't know, fun. The business model captures that social contract by discussing the revenue model and the cost. How do you afford to make what you get? In the case of Facebook, the number one cost, servers, server farms. While you, sir, may not cost Facebook anything, everyone as a group does, because they need servers, electricity, staff to keep them going. The revenue model for Facebook is selling you to advertisers. When we look at a business model, we have come to realize, thanks to a very smart guy named Alex Osterwilder, that the business models have 9 components. Any business model has 9 components. The first component is the customers. Who are you helping? Which are users who don't pay you but use your product? Which are customers who pay you for your product? Do you see them once? Do you see them regularly? Is it a transaction? Are you part of their community? What is your customer relationship? On Facebook, we have an ongoing customer relationship with the company. On Amazon, we have a transactional relationship. You talk about the channels. How do we deliver value? For most online businesses, delivered online. Pizza Pizza, you go in and they give you the food. We talk about the value of Wikipedia. More information at a lower cost, instantly updated, hundreds of thousands of topics. That's why Wikipedia's arrival has led to creative destruction of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Creative destruction is a fancy academic term for the new kills the old. You want your startup to lead to creative destruction because it allows you to eat someone else's business. Think about Wikipedia. Wikipedia killed the Encyclopedia Britannica. Why pay $1,500 to get 13 volumes that are out of date the moment they're printed, that you can't carry around in your pocket, when you could get for free Wikipedia? When that happens, the new kills the old, and it leads to creative destruction. Look at Netflix and Blockbuster. Look at email and the Postal Service. Again, Smees don't lead to creative destruction. Startups do. Startups re-envision the business model that solves the customer's pain. The other components, the key activities, the key resources, the key partners. So if you're Amazon, you know, the key resources are server space, the key activities is merchandising, the key partners are the book publishers, the authors, the other sellers. And then at the bottom is the basis of the business. What contributes to costs and what contributes to revenue. We know that when we convert this pretty picture into a piece of paper, it's called a business model canvas. If you Google business model canvas, you'll get templates that look like this. They're 11 by 17, and they have replaced the business plan. What it basically says is, these are our guesses. These are who we think our customers are. These is our value proposition. This is how we think we'll make money. And we've replaced 45 pages that no one read with a dynamic piece of paper that allows us to solve the assumptions. And that's the basic business. Consumer segments. For whom are we creating value? Who are our most important customers? Channels. How do people get our product? Relationships. Is it ongoing? What customer segments do we touch? The value prop. The business model canvas frames your work. It provides the starting point. And what you start with looks a lot like this. This is a business model canvas for Amazon. The yellow stickies are the online retail business. The purple stickies are the Kindle business. So who are the customers? The mass market, everybody. What is the relationship? Self-service, automated services. You don't go to Amazon and say, hey, what book should I read? You go and type it in and help yourself. The channel, people get to Amazon through a mobile app. They get to it through a website, or they can get Kindle books through other retailers. What's the value? Well, people don't use Amazon because it has great customer service. You don't even see the customer service. They use Amazon because it's cheaper and faster, and if you have a Prime account, it'll be there tomorrow. So Amazon has reinvented retailing by changing the business model. Most stores are limited to what they can carry because there's only so much shelf space. So what do they carry? They carry the 20% of books that 80% of the people want. Now, I've written 5 books. Stephen King has written 35 books. I'll bet you Stephen King is in more bookstores than I am, unfortunately for me. But more people want the Stephen King book than me and the books that I've written. And so if you have a limited shelf space, you're going to list and put on the shelf the things most people want to buy. But Amazon, they have no shelf space constraint. So they can carry all kinds of books like mine, or even wackier books like Klingon poetry. You wouldn't put a book of Klingon poetry in a bookstore because 1 in 1,000 people are going to care, and you'll have too little shelf space. Here's a canvas for Netflix. Right? When we used to get entertainment through a movie, we would walk uphill in the snow to the Blockbuster store. We would wave hello to the out-of-work U of T film student. We would go to the shelf and get Harry Potter movie 4. We would hope it was still in the store. We would go back to the U of T film grad. We would take the movie out. We would go home, forget to return it, and get fined for it. So Netflix said there has to be a better way. And in 2006, they started the better way. Instead of having a U of T employee in a store, they would do it all virtually. You would make a list of the movies you wanted to see. They would send them to you by mail, 3 at a time. Keep them as long as you want. No late fees. When you're done, send them back by mail, and we'll send you the next 3 videos. That was so good that more than 1 million people signed up. Those same people who were renting Harry Potter for $2.99 and paying $20 when it was late. That avoidance of the late fee was enough to change the business model. And then, of course, fast forward to today, they've changed it again. They've discontinued their mailing service, or almost discontinued it, and now we all see Netflix as an online streaming company. That wouldn't have worked in 2006. There wasn't enough broadband. There wasn't enough high-speed internet at home. So Netflix examines their business model and puts down what they think is their first guess. Then, using something called the lean startup methodology, which we're going to talk about, they test those assumptions. And they slowly replace their guesses with certainty. When you go to test the business model, we call it testing the hypothesis, which is a fancy grade 10 chemistry term for checking if you're right. So when you test the hypothesis for customer segment, you're checking, does this problem exist? Who is the customer? Who is the user? Who is willing to pay? Will the channel work? Is the revenue and pricing make sense? It has gone from a best guess and a business plan and pray to a, I don't know, but let's go run a series of tests to find out. You can find online all sorts of things relating to business model tests. There is even a website to help you. It is called BM Fiddle. BM Fiddle, F-I-D-D-L-E, like fiddle, and BM as in business model. And in that, you can drop down, and it will give you a digital canvas, and it will start asking you questions that you have to go test. And then by testing it, you start to flesh out your business model. Remember, I haven't even written code yet. I haven't written any kind of software yet. I'm just going to see my customers to make sure they're interested, to understand their problem. Now, the business model canvas, which was invented in 2008, was very useful for existing business, but wasn't so useful for businesses that were trying to figure out their model. So a gentleman named Ash Majora came along, and he made some changes. And he changed customer relationships to your unfair advantage, key activities to solution, key resources to key metrics, and key partners to problem. By doing that, he created the lean canvas, and that's what we use today. The lean canvas is the starting point of any startup in the 21st century. If you have not created one, stop coding. Stop buying inventory. Stop looking for co-founders. Go download the 11 by 17 piece of paper called a lean canvas. It's free. And start putting your guesses. Where do you start? You start with the problem. What do you think the top 3 problems you want to tackle solve? Then you move to, who is your problem solver? Who has that problem that needs to be solved? Then you figure out what's the unique value. What will you do better than anyone else? After you nail that, you start writing up your description. And only now do you start figuring out what your prototype, your minimum viable product might look like. After you figure that out, you start testing channels, how people will buy it. You start figuring out how you can charge people, what your costs will be, and finally, your key metrics and your unfair advantage. So let's take a moment and do it together. Let's pretend we're Larry and Sergey way back in the day. It's not really fair because this wasn't invented till 2010 and they started in 97. So let's imagine we could. What was the problem that Google wanted to tackle? Well, in 1997, we were adding hundreds of new websites a day. Those websites were growing so fast, you couldn't find anything on the internet. Because where would you type it in to find it? Remember, there's no Google. So where would you start? You would actually start with curated links. Yahoo, Alta Vista, they were places which gave you links. So you would go, and it was just like the library. Entertainment, subsection TV, subsection science fiction, subsection Battlestar Galactica, subsection best show ever. Okay? And they would give you a link. But that link was chosen by a little old librarian. Sat there and decided that's what you were looking for. But when you looked for Apple, how did she know if you meant the fruit or the company or the auto glass repair company? So Google figured out that the web was growing so fast, we needed a better way. And the way they did it was by link analysis or citation analysis. It's not important. They figured out that the more popular websites were linked in. More people linked to the New York Times than they linked to Ryerson's newspaper. Therefore, the New York Times is more authoritative. If I look for the New York Times in Google, I'll find it. So the number one problem that Google tried to solve was, there's too much noise on the internet. I can't find the signal. There's too much crap. How do I know what I'm looking for? And that was in a time when we grew hundreds a day. We now grow hundreds of thousands a day. Who were the customers of Google? At the time, early adopters of the internet, which were very limited. University students, university researchers, military bases. The internet wasn't everywhere like it is now. You needed a special account to get on. Then they would have figured out what their value was, and Google's value proposition was better, faster, more accurate. Google's goal is to get you where you want to go on the internet faster than Bing or anywhere else. What was their solution? A simple bar that you type in keywords and the answers come back. Behind the scenes, they built a whole algorithm and a system by which it would decide what to show you, but their solution was a website that sorted the internet. What was the channel? Anyone who went on the internet could go to google.com. So it was just the internet. How would they make money? Well, this took a few years before they came up with Google AdWords. And what they concluded was, if you were searching for an Apple computer, you are more likely to buy an Apple computer. If you are looking up what time the movie is starting in your neighborhood, you're more likely to buy a movie ticket. So what they did was they sold ads against people's searching. It's a little more complicated than that. They invented a whole bunch of ways to do it. They knew their costs would be based on servers and indexing the web. They came up with many other revenue streams over time. But to this day, the key metric, the key performance indicator, the key KPI of Google remains the same. How many people, what percentage of searches find the answer on the first page? Because Google gives you like 100 pages. But normally you find the link you're looking for on the first page, maybe on the second page, but it's been very rare that you'd have to go to the 15th or the 16th page. And because that's their key metric, they monitor that every day. And that's what drives the health of their business. All of this gets us to what's known as the startup lifecycle. If you map performance or profit on the y-axis, so this is more successful and this is less successful, and on the x-axis you map time, so this is a year, 2 years, and this is day one. We know that a startup starts by losing money. Doesn't have a product, doesn't have a customer, it's figuring it out. Eventually, it solves the problem of what do my customers want, and it starts to build this prototype called a minimum viable product. Then it tries to take that product and move it forward. And as it does so, it starts to sell more than it costs. So the curve goes up. And eventually, they start to make more money than they cost to build the company. And at that point, you begin to scale. The first point is known as problem-solution fit. It is the first milestone of any startup. You are looking to confidently prove that you have found a problem that is big and prevalent and that people want to buy your solution. You haven't found out how cheap you can sell it or how to market it properly. You have just found that people are confused on the internet and our Google bot helps them be less confused. This first portion here is an exploration of customer, problem, solution, the first 4 boxes on the lean canvas. Once you've nailed those, you then start moving towards what's known as product market fit. Product market fit is the moment in time you have answered all the key questions here. Product market fit says, I know how much it'll cost me to get a customer. I know how much money I can make from a customer. I know where to get lots of them. I know what else to sell them. When you move from problem solution fit to product market fit, you are looking to get the business ready for growth. Once you have found product market fit, and I'll tell you how you know in a second, you are no longer a true startup. You have nailed your business model. You have fulfilled your lean canvas exercise. You no longer have uncertainty. You can tell me how much each customer costs. That figure, by the way, is called COCA, C-O-C-A, the cost of customer acquisition. It's really simple. You take all of your marketing costs, all of your sales costs, your advertising costs, your salespeople, and you divide it by the number of new users. So the COCA for Rogers, the cell company, the cellular company, it's probably about $100. So if you divide all of their new users by all the money they spend on commercials, you get about $100. But there's another key number, and it's called LTV, or lifetime value. Many people have heard the term ARPU, A-R-P-U, average revenue per user. That's how much you make off of each customer in a year. Lifetime value is simply your ARPU, how much you make off each year, multiplied by how long you have them as a customer. So Rogers has an ARPU of $150 and an LTV of $600. That means, averaged out and oversimplified, it costs Rogers $100 to get a customer, but that customer is worth $600 over 4 years. When you get to this point, you know those answers. And then, and only then, will venture capitalists give you millions and millions of dollars. Why? Because this is the point where you can say, I buy $1 of Google AdWords, 100 people click on that. From those 100 people, 10 download my app. From those 10, 5 buy freemium, extra lives on Angry Bird, extra turns on Candy Crush. And those 5 people each spend $50, $10, and that's way more than $1 in Google AdWords. So today's venture capitalists, and I'm talking about Series A rounds, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, they go to companies that have very little risk. There's no management risk. They've already proven they can run the business. There's no market risk. They've already proven people will buy the crappy version, so they'll certainly buy the good version. And they've already proven the magic risk, that they can come up with a solution that's 10 times better. What the venture capitalists are looking to do is to fuel the fire of the startup's engine. Let's say you're a dating website. Well, you depend on the number of people on your website. So you go out and try to recruit them. That generates a cost of client acquisition. Some people join your website for free, and they don't make you any money, and some will pay for upgrades, to have better pictures, to be in the search, to contact people. They want to make sure that what you make off of customers far exceeds the total cost of getting customers. Because if it doesn't, you're screwed. If every time you get a customer it costs you $10, but you only make $5, you're losing money every time you get a new customer. No one's going to fund that. Below this line, funding is really focused on friends and family, angel investors, places like our Ryerson Futures Fund, accelerators like Techstars. After this point, when the risk is almost gone, you can turn to private equity and million-dollar solutions. The good news is, to get to problem solution fit is usually somewhere between $5,000 and $25,000. To get the product market fit, it's usually between $250,000 to $500,000 and dropping. But there are a lot more people who can provide $5,000 than there are who can provide $5 million. And the job of venture capitalists has really changed. In 1997, I had to invest here. because it cost $5 million just to get a return. But now I can wait. This is the life cycle of a startup. And it gets broken into 3 phases. Phase 1, problem, solution, fit. You interview customers to figure out what it is that is bothering them the most. What problem has the most inelastic demand? Right? Inelastic demand, you would pay anything for the product. Right? Air. If I cut off your air, you'll pay anything to have air. An elastic product, my beautiful shoes, okay? $100, they're a good buy. $10, they're a great buy. $1,000, forget it. It's elastic. You want to search for an inelastic problem. You want to search for a problem that people have as a need, not a want. And you want to test your solution. We use the lean startup loop: build, measure, learn. Build a mock-up. Take it to your customers. Learn what they think is important and refine it. Go test it with your customers. Get the results in numbers and learn from it. If you've made a mistake, say you thought the people for your dating site were women under 35 and men under 40. But when you go and interview them, it turns out that's not the case. More people between 40 and 80 are looking for what you're selling. You would then pivot. Pivot is an overused term that simply means I am making a change to one of these 9 boxes. If I am testing problems and none of them are resonating, I must pivot the problem I'm solving. If I'm offering a solution that less than 40% of the people I pitch want to buy, I have to pivot. Now, this 40% number is completely made up. It is just a benchmark that everyone has agreed to. Because if you interview 100 people and 4 agree with you, is that enough? Maybe they all like you. If you interview 100 people and 99 people want what you're selling, that's a little too high. So we've decided 40%. So you run experiments on all of these looking to get 40% bought in. It's not always as obvious as asking people. 4 years ago, a student from Ryerson named Michael Petroff left our school to go to Silicon Valley's Y Combinator. He launched an app called Pair. It is the social network of 2. So it's only between you and your partner. So whatever you send is encrypted, can't be seen by other people. There's no chance it'll appear on CNN if you're a senator. So he went to the market and offered it for free, focusing on people in long-distance relationships. When he launched 7 days after launch, he had 140,000 downloads. That's 7 days. Pretty much proves he's found a market. Then he started to roll out features, and people started to pay him. But the day he knew he had found Nirvana was the day he spoke to his mentor, Paul Graham, who is the backbone of Y Combinator's mentorship program. And Paul said, you know what? Why don't you go unplug the server? Why don't you take the app offline? Don't tell anybody. Just kick the cord out. And of course, they're freaking out. Why would we do that? We have thousands of people on the app. Because if no one calls to complain, if you don't get any emails saying this can't go on, you haven't really built something that's a need. 41 minutes is as long as they could wait before they plugged it back in. The emails were over 200 in 41 minutes. But mostly it was their girlfriends calling them to say, what happened to our app? Again, unplug it. Take it away from people. If they're chase after you down the street to get it back, you know you're onto something. If they say, what do I care? Go back to the drawing board. The idea is to move through the problem solution fit, to move through the product market fit. You do this through interviews and testing. You do this through creating a minimum viable product. Once you have nailed all the elements of your lean canvas, then and only then can you scale. Then and only then should you pour money in and try to grow your business. Because if you can't make it work with 1,000 users, how do you think it's going to work with 1,000,000 users? The lean startup methodology is a process, dynamic in nature, of iterating from plan A to a plan that will work. Most likely plan X, plan Y, plan Z. It is, I'm going to start here, I'm going to follow a methodology, scientific in nature. I'm going to treat this all as a learning experiment. I'm not going to fall in love with my product, with my customers, until I confirm that they exist. The process of the lean startup is a validated learning experiment. You're not trying to answer, can this be built? You're trying to answer, should this be built? We can create all kinds of cool code and do all kinds of wacky things. That doesn't mean anyone will care. And a startup who has no one care about their product, their solution, their service, isn't a startup very long. The startup methodology is about building a test, measuring the results, and learning by either keep going or pivoting. This is generally referred to as hypothesis-based entrepreneurship or hypothesis-driven entrepreneurship. It starts by envisioning the venture, the startup, listing it on a canvas, business model or lean, changing those assumptions on that canvas into testable hypotheses, and testing them. The results of the test are, we got 40% or more, so keep moving forward. Move on to the next test. We didn't get 40% or more, so pivot, make a change. We thought our software for billing medical services was for doctors, but we went to 100 doctors, and they all told us we don't need it because OHIP, the provincial health insurance, gives us software. Well, that's an important thing to know. If your customers already have something for free, it's unlikely they're going to buy what you're selling. So you would pivot, and maybe you would say, you know who might need this? Chiropractors. They don't get to use provincial health insurance. What about mental health workers? What about dentists? How about veterinarians? They're all doing the same job as doctors, just the product is different. But you pivot to find a model that resonates. When you do a hypothesis test, you're really finding a way of applying an experiment through science to get a prediction. A good hypothesis leads to good experimental design, and good experimental design leads to data that you can trust. You're really saying, what is the simplest thing we could do to prove that dentists want our product before it exists? Could we sell it to them in advance? Could we do a crowdfunding campaign? One of the greatest benefits of Kickstarter or Indiegogo, these crowdfunding, is your customers are buying products that don't yet exist. What greater proof could you have that people want a smartwatch than 10 million sales orders before you've even made one? We have a company in a digital media zone called DreamKey. We're an investor in it. And they raised almost $2 million and had one drone. They sold $2 million worth of drones with one ugly prototype that they only shot from one angle so you wouldn't see the duct tape. Okay? It's true. The other advantages of crowdfunding, you actually get to meet your customers. So you can ask them things like, would you prefer the drone to be pink or blue? Let's test that idea. But even better, unlike me, those customers don't demand equity. When I invested in DreamKey, I took a percentage of the company back. When those people bought the product in advance, they just want the product. The key outcome of an experimental approach is measurable evidence and learning. Measurable evidence and learning. This, I've taken the name off, this is an example of measured learning. This is the activity of a company I had a number of years ago. On the graph, you're measuring users. On the other side of the graph in red or orange, you're measuring revenue. They list the hypothesis that they went out to test. They don't tell you how they tested it, but they tell you the results, and then they tell you what they're going to do next. The lean startup is about moving through the lean canvas by hypothesis testing and running learning experiments. The basic structure of a hypothesis isn't that tough. I believe X people will do Y activity for Z reason. I believe singles under 30 will download an app that allows them to swipe left or swipe right to meet people in a non-socially awkward way. Apparently that's what kids today do. We used to call it the bar. So I believe that youth under 30 who are single will download an app, upload their profile, and try to hook up online because it's less awkward than walking up to a total stranger and getting rejected. A good hypothesis is written down in advance, is often written in the negative. I don't want to get too scientific with the null hypothesis, but take a stats class if you must. It's testable and it's measurable. We don't invest in companies who say our customers like us. What a useless statement. I invest in companies who say, I know our customers like us because 93% of them come back more than once to buy more. That I fund. Objective, quantifiable data is what people want to see. Even 7 out of 10 is better than our customers like us. Hypothesis testing can be seen through example. More people would not catch the train if they got a message. Again, you test it in the negative. So you go out to 100 people standing on the subway platform and you ask them, if you got a message saying your GO train is leaving in 15 minutes, would you be more likely to take the train? And the reason you state it in the negative is because if you interview 100 people and more than 40% would not do it, you stop. But if more than 40% would do it, the opposite of this, you've proven it. So I go out, I ask this question, would you go use the train more if you got an SMS, a text message, 15 minutes in advance? If 70 out of 100 people say yes, that experiment is validated. You now know that a reasonable number of people will adopt your product that does this. A/B testing is a very interesting technique that proves how hypothesis works. Let's say you're creating a new car, and this new car is for octogenarians, people 80 and above, growing population segment, right? So it has a rubber bumper, right? It has big dashboard with big numbers. It has a radio with only 3 buttons, right? It has an old-fashioned seatbelt, a giant mirror. But what you don't know is whether or not they care about color. So you go to 100 of them and you show them orange. Then you go to another 100 of them and you show them green. And you ask them, would you be more likely to buy this car if it was orange? And then the other group, if it was green. And you look at the results. And based on those results, you make a decision as to the color of the car. On the internet, we think when we type in Amazon.com, we're going to the same website. I hate to shatter your illusions. If we all typed Amazon.com and put our screens next to each other, they would not be the same. Amazon runs anywhere from 100 to 300 A/B tests daily. They move the buy button. They change how many books they recommend to you. Why? Because they're trying to optimize. So they take these visitors, they split them into option A and option B, and it's all done automatically depending on the time, right? The next person comes in, goes to the other one, then the next. And then they look at the conversion rate. How many people bought when the button was here, How many people bought when the button was there? And we optimize. That is an example of a hypothesis test to optimize your business. We have talked at great lengths about why it's a fabulous time to start a business. One of the reasons is it's cheaper now than ever before to launch your business. The other reason is we have this map that tells us the step-by-step process by which to follow. As opposed to when I was in school and they gave us a biography and said, learn. This map has been validated. The lean startup methodology was successfully used by Tinder, by Uber, by Snapchat, and by many of the Valley darlings. It has now, since 2010, gone around the world. If you want to learn more about it, I would recommend some of these books. Running Lean by Ash Majuri, The Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, or my new book, Startup Opportunities, Know When to Quit Your Day Job, available now at Amazon and in the bookstore. Thanks very much, everybody.